There was supposed to be a very limited retention period for how long the data would stay available. But it turned out the police department had executed a contract with Flock. Just to give you one example of a failure, the retention period was a joke, right? Because Flock said, we only retain this data for 7 days, but that a separate provision of the contract said, well, we can feed all the data into our machine learning, artificial intelligence program. And so do machines ever forget? So what is the purpose of a 7-day retention period if the AI can access all the data on the front end? And so that was just one example of a lot of failures. Their profit isn't from selling the camera or leasing the camera equipment. It's from what do they do with that data set they acquire. We know that these AI technologies are acquiring massive data sets for further monetization, right? That's just a truth statement across the economy, right?
So there was a part of LiveView's website where they said, they told me that we don't do facial recognition, and I'm really happy that I had that conversation with them ahead of time. And then I just look on their website, I do 3 clicks, and it says how LiveView helps. Not like general, we put this for SEO, how LiveView helps, and machine learning enables facial recognition. So if a company were to lie during the procurement process with a privacy policy that you have in place, what would be the consequences of that?
Right, I mean, frankly, it's a crime, right? It should be a penal offense to acquire data under false pretenses, right? It's a theft and it's a fraud. Ultimately, we do need higher level regulation from the federal government, ideally, right? They would create some sort of set of consequences, but we're not going to hold our breath. And so we have to be as careful as possible on the front end. And that was kind of a rallying cry when the community came out to speak against this, that the only safe data is data that's never created in the first place.
So this brings me to a question you had. You were talking about federally, and I know that I'm not talking about the federal level, but I know that Texas banned red light cameras statewide in 2019 with House Bill 1631. Would you support any sort of state legislation that limits what municipal governments can do with regards to AI surveillance of citizens?
Absolutely. We really need that. Now, whether we could get that through the current legislature, that's another question, right? And this is where we need the community to kind of wake up and demand this kind of policy.
I forget the name of the senator. It's on the tip of my tongue. It was Bob Hall that proposed this before it became a House bill in 2019. And it was incredibly bipartisan and it had a lot of support.
I think, for example, fighting these ALPRs is becoming an extremely popular issue for the community. I mean, after Austin, ended our program, we've seen the city of Lockhart end their program. And just earlier today, Hays County, which is just south of Austin, voted to end their program. And so I think when the average person learns that these cameras are creating profiles of everywhere we move throughout the day, and that profile can be sold to private vendors as well as law enforcement agencies, I think people don't want this. And so there's just some serious public education to do. Freedom is a bipartisan issue. And this is just fundamental, right? The idea of some device or some company tracking our movements, knowing everything we do. I mean, we're becoming acculturated to it, right? I mean, all of us carry around these cell phones that do track our movements. But I think this is just another example. It's a bridge too far for a lot of people. I mean, I tend to think that Flock is irredeemable in this space. I mean, they've made so many mistakes, or intentional or otherwise, so many infringements of people's fundamental liberties that I don't think they can be trusted as a company. This is me just brainstorming. The data set would have to be kept local, right? It couldn't be in the cloud. Because yes, once you transfer the data to the private company, what's going to really stop them? If you're thinking about a Fourth Amendment, we're thinking about the protections against unreasonable search and seizure, right? So to be arrested, there has to be probable cause, right? Specific, articulable facts that you committed a crime. And then even for the so-called stop and frisk, there needs to be a reasonable suspicion that, again, that's based on evidence, right? Specific facts. And these, by contrast, are dragnets without any reasonable suspicion, much less probable cause. They are doing a search, right? They are tracking our movements. They are doing what we would perceive to be unreasonable, right? Which is following us throughout our movements in the course of a day. Now, Flock, in their policy, says that we're doing all this in public. Our cars are on public roads, so there's no expectation of privacy. And to me, that's a very insidious argument because our whole legal framework is pre-computers, pre-big tech. And so these legal rules were developed on the basis of someone visually observing something, not being continuously observed throughout your movements throughout a city or state. And so unfortunately, our legal landscape is not up to the task to really protect us in this environment. Core of the, I bet, Virginia ruling is that there's no facts that justify either a quick search or a seizure. I think I'm a little older than you. I don't know if you read Fahrenheit 451 when you were in school, but the idea that you're being followed at every step by a different camera is real. And frankly, London pioneered this years ago, right? The way they have got their whole CCTV network. And so it's going to take a national movement to really address this question. But I think we just have to get wins at each step. Let's stop the live view contract. Let's stop the next flock contract. Let's develop a comprehensive city policy. And then I think my role in this movement could be to share information with other city leaders, right? Okay, Houston, San Antonio, Santa Fe, Phoenix, look what we're doing here. Do you think you want something similar there? So I can organize in my space, but I think that's where we need outside non-governmental organizations. We need public leaders to educate the public. I only won by, 207 votes. So some people give me credit for helping stop ALPRs in Austin. So elections do matter. We have a lot of leverage both politically and economically, right? If a city like Austin develops a privacy policy that is popular, and we convince San Antonio, Dallas, Houston to follow, suddenly you've got a third of the state of Texas governed by popular privacy policies. And then all those state legislators and senators and US congresspeople who represent those areas, they know their constituents care about these issues. And it becomes much easier to carry these wins into different venues. Now that Austin got this win against Flock and Axon, it's easier for Lockhart and San Marcos and Hayes County to follow suit because we're expanding the Overton window. Austin is the biggest city in the country to not have ALPRs. And that's why this conversation is so important, because Flock and Axon and the rest of them, they want us to readopt ALPRs here. This is almost going to become a central point of struggle in this fight for privacy, because they know that if Austin can stand against these policies, then we encourage others to follow suit. One thing I've really come to understand is how so much of government skews, at least local government, skews towards what do the police want. And there's a whole complex. So Austin, city council, there's 11 of us, including the mayor, that vote on policy. But there's one person, the city manager, who oversees the 17,000 employees of the city. So that person's the CEO. We hire that person, but after we hire them, they do pretty much everything, right? Subject to our limitations. And if you ever participate in a search process for a city manager in Texas, one of the biggest factors is how that candidate interacts with the police, right? And so fundamentally, city government is skewed towards appeasing the police. And when a police chief says, this tool will help me solve crime, it's extremely hard for a politician to say no. And especially when that police chief's demand for a device like ALPRs is supported by the business groups. So while some of us were organizing against ALPRs, this group Opportunity Austin, which is like the big regional business association, was organizing for them. And so if you're a mayor, and I don't know the mayor of Denver, I don't really know anything about them, right? But what their calculation might be, some constituents are mad right now, but I think they're going to quit after a while. But my career depends a lot more on this business association and these police leaders who could support me for re-election or running for Congress or what have you. And so there's a perception that the public has short-term memories, that we're not well organized, that will let people off the hook, and there won't be accountability.
Thank you for taking the time.
All right,
and thank you for
wonderful.
providing honest answers to every single question. And I think people are going to appreciate whether they agree with you or not, the brand of authenticity that you bring to this stuff. And thank you for being the only person on the city council to also reach out to me and tell me where you stand on the cameras. I respect it a lot.
Awesome.
And
Well,
I
thanks so
appreciate
much for the opportunity. Appreciate it, Lewis.
All right.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.